This is the Valerion VisionMaster Pro 2. It's a 4K laser projector. It has a lot of gaming-centric features, which means that rather than just watching exclusively movies on this, you can actually use this as a gaming monitor. Now, you can't get full 4K 120, 240 hertz out of this, but you can get 1080p, 240, etc., and also relatively low delay of 4 milliseconds. I actually personally find that using this to view drone video especially is really great, especially when you're talking about 6K downsampled content from maybe like a Mavic or some of the air drones. You're actually able to really fully view that content from this projector and actually see it. So after testing this, as this is a review, let's talk about what I've thought of it. The other projectors that I have are JMGO projectors. They are the N1S Ultimate, which is somewhat similarly spec'd. It has similar projection, similar resolution, similar brightness, albeit slightly larger. But there are some differences that I'm just going to touch on in today's video. For one, the Valerion projector does not have any eye protection. And since this is technically a laser projector, depending on the quality of the lasers, how the lasers are rated, it's not something I would like to get in my eye. One of the things I do appreciate about the JMGO projector, though, is that it does have the ability to automatically detect a person, detect the movement, and then dampen the intensity of the light, which is an added plus. Now, I wouldn't recommend staring into any of these projectors, even with it dampened, but it is a nice added plus. Now, the Valerion projector is much more of a clear winner in terms of trying to project on weird locations. And what I mean by that is, so it's called trapezoidal correction, and you can actually really fit the projection onto a really weird screen. So I have one that's on my ceiling, and being able to go through and adjust that to actually get it to fit, where something I was not able to get with any of the JMGO projectors just because of how they're designed. This is 3000 ANSI lumens, which I thought was pretty decent, especially in kind of this relatively shady room. It is still not something that I would put in direct sunlight, but if you have, a relatively bright room, you can pretty much see it. There are some settings to amplify the darkness and also make more details in the dark apparent, and I didn't really see a huge benefit to those. However, also since it is relatively bright in this room, they also kind of do get washed out. The other thing that I do really wish was added is some type of stand like the JMGO projector. This projector basically can kind of point anywhere. I'm not saying that this can't, but this requires an external stand. There is a little stand that pops up, but even trying to project on my ceiling, I think I was supposed to get some type of stand and that just never showed up. So being able to go through and have the ability to, in this device itself, have some more control of where it's pointing would be great, because the little stand on the bottom is not ideal. The contrast on the Valerion projector is really good, arguably miles ahead of what the JMGO projector has. I think the contrast itself, especially since you're looking at depending on what you get for sale, maybe a $500 difference, this projector makes a lot more sense if you really like watching movies. The speakers are great, but I want to say most stuff nowadays is relatively great. It's not a pro or con. They're speakers. There's nothing exceptional or not exceptional about them. Another thing too is this device is rather heavy. It is substantially heavier actually, and I would say that if you are trying to hang this somewhere, there's a lot of metal on here. Just be aware that you're going to have a pretty robust system if you're hanging it on the ceiling, because it does weigh a considerable amount. Flipping it around back here, one of the things I do want to give credit to as well is that this projector has a lot of inputs. You have 3 HDMIs in, USBs, optical audio, and Ethernet. Especially if you're trying to view really high bandwidth content, this is ideal and just flat out comparatively much more professional than the JMGO projectors. I would argue that if you're really looking for a cinema experience, it's very apparent that this is built more for people that really like watching serious high quality content, versus the JMGO projector, which does have some of the similar specs, but it's not as much of a home theater as you could get with the Valerion. Another thing I just want to point out too is that this projector itself has 4 gigabytes of RAM versus 2 on this, and a lot of the other projectors have 2 as well. So it's been kind of weird that this is extremely smooth to navigate versus this projector, which is pretty much like new within the last year it was released. It still stutters. It has a lot of issues. I don't know if it's crashed. it does have a lot of issues because of the lack of RAM. So the future proofing on the Valerion is also there and apparent even today of how quickly and smooth it is, and who knows what we're talking about in the future with updates. So now switching over, when using this for gaming, the much larger projection screen is actually really great. The refresh rate, the high refresh rate is also really good, and the low delay is really good as well. So I really could see this for someone that maybe likes console gaming, because I see this more of like replacing a TV. Some people that like sitting at desks and playing on a desk might not really get the full advantage if they're using this projector. I think if you were maybe had this on a wall and maybe had a desk in the middle of a room, you could kind of use it. But I think overall the projector itself is much more kind of like a living room setup, and you have maybe a console you're hooking up to it, maybe even a laptop, but I think it's not going to directly replace what, you know, sitting at a desk having a monitor. Also, if this had 4K 120 hertz, I think that would be very cool too, versus the 240 at a certain point, especially in my opinion, this is my opinion here, after 120, 140 hertz, it's not that big of a jump. I would have much rather had 4K 120 or 4K 140 rather than the 240 at 1080p, but that's again personal preference. Another thing that I like to do with these really big monitors is set them up for drones. So that's mostly what we cover on the channel is drones. So being able to preview footage, I have my main monitor and my desktop is a like MSI like 32 inch like 4K monitor. This, especially when you're trying to view drone video and you're trying to make sure everything's in focus, make sure everything's looking good. Maybe you're viewing camera video, you're trying to view your camera and you're trying to pixel peep and make sure that everything looks good, especially when you can blow it up this big. You can't take a 32 inch monitor and make it bigger. That's just not practical, versus this can be as big as you want it to be, and having that flexibility of having the gaming portion as well as the standard ability to view footage that looks really good is great. I personally think this fits in really good for content creators, people that want to view the quality of their videos. Maybe you're using this as a monitor. I think it is a viable option if you're trying to get accurate color representation and an accurate view of what your footage looks like. Also, just want to point out that it comes with a carrying case that is actually really solid and also really valuable to carry this around and take this somewhere. It is really heavy again. I do like that the JMGO projector kind of has everything that you need that fits in the case, versus if you really want to take this somewhere and assuming you are putting it in kind of a non-traditional format, you're going to need to take an additional stand. It does take the standard 1/4 inch camera screw, and you can kind of mount it with that. However, in most situations, especially if you're doing something that's really, like, you're going to need a really heavy, robust case. It's not something you can really mount on a tripod without it being very wobbly. So I do wish having everything integrated, that is kind of a minus. But I guess it's a trade-off you're making, because this is something that I see more as a home theater and you're not taking it as much, versus the JMGO projector is kind of a lot more portable, and I don't see it being used in the same way of setting up as robust of a home theater. With this, you have the optical audio. You're going to have a speaker system. You're going to have something that's kind of complex. You're going to have a lot of different displays. You're probably hooking it up to like an Ethernet connection, and you're probably watching very high bandwidth content. As me personally, for a content creator, that high bandwidth content is going to be whatever I'm, coming out of my cameras, whatever's coming out of my drones. Another thing too that I found is that this projector is rather quiet, especially when you have something playing with the speakers. You really don't hear it. So I want to give that credit where credit's due. Also, another thing I want to point out is just the importance of this Ethernet connection, because one of my biggest complaints with the JMGO projector, for example, is it's purely internet or Wi-Fi based, and it has no way for a direct Ethernet connection. So I think that's very frustrating, because especially in this room up here, this is really far away from the router, especially when you put it on the side where the projector is, or where I have my projector screen. It's really far away and it frequently buffers. And so what I end up actually having to do is using my desktop, which is connected to the Ethernet, and then creating a Wi-Fi network so it can access it. So having a direct Ethernet connection is actually really great, because you can directly hook it up, especially in places which you might not have a great Wi-Fi system. And also, streaming that kind of data is high bandwidth. And so lastly, should you buy this, I think that if you are someone that values, especially like a home theater experience, especially high quality content, and trying to view that accurately, I think it does make an obvious choice to choose this over anything else, even the JMGO projectors. If you're looking for something that's less a home theater dedicated room and more something that you might switch between rooms, take places, and kind of looking for an all-in-one experience, I don't think this is the most convenient option. In terms of picture quality, I do think this is the most accurate that we've looked at on this channel, and it does the best job representing what the content actually is. So thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and check out the channel for other cool tech-related reviews and videos. Goodbye.